Welcome to Community in Arabic, a podcast show sponsored by Lipton Yellow Label.
We'll be chatting with successful Arabs in the US and Canada and learning about their journey and how they positively impact their community.
We are your hosts, Malek Abdulsamad
And Anwar Jebran. We're so excited today to be speaking with Alex Dabagh. Alex is a New York, born and raised to an immigrant family from Syria and Lebanon. He's a second generation leathersmith, great products, great family business. And then, of course, he started his initiative called Any Bag to do tote bags, but with a very interesting twist that we're going to learn about. Hi, Alex. Thank you so much for taking the time being with us.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much, Alex. So just to start, you were born and raised in New York, but you come from an immigrant family. Would love to hear about your experience growing up to an immigrant family. How did that shape you and that connection you had with back home?
Of course. I mean, growing up in Brooklyn pretty much all my life to immigrant parents was always, when I was younger, it was a little different. I was always a little bit more shy or intimidated to tell people where I was from, what my background was, because there wasn't that many, Lebanese or Syrian kids in my classes. It was mostly Italian kids or Irish kids, German, but like Lebanese and Syrian, every time I said that, they would look at me like, where's that? What is that? I was always a little bit shy. My parents would play Arabic music and I'd roll up the windows in the car. So it was pretty funny, just the experience to where I am now with my kids. All I want them to do is listen to Arabic music and talk Arabic and just really take the culture and embrace it. I didn't really embrace it fully and completely, I'd say, till about maybe when I was around 18 years old, maybe when I was getting into college. When I first went, when I went to Lebanon for the first time as an adult, and that's really when, I fell in love with it. And I was like, this is amazing. Our history, our culture, our food, there's nothing like it out there. And, I really fell in love with it when I was around, 18, 19 years old, entering college. But going there really changed my aspect and my outlook and really, really made me proud of who I am and where I come from.
That's amazing. And, how is it like, being close to your dad and transitioning to start working with him? If you can just give us and give our audience an idea also how your dad came and started from scratch and started this business until you joined him and, worked with him as well.
No problem. So my dad immigrated here during the late 1970s when the Civil War was going on in Beirut. My dad actually grew up in Sham in Syria, and he went to Beirut at a very young age with his family. And he basically dropped out of school in the 3rd grade because my grandfather or his father went blind. So he became a man at a very young age and became, responsible for the family at a very young age. So he grew up very quickly. He didn't have the luxuries of a childhood. It was always work and, how to provide for the family at a very young age, which is kind of how, like everything we do now, we always look back, or he always says to us, I do this all for you guys because I didn't have this. But, growing up with my dad and just going to work for him was completely different from what I expected. After college, he did not want me in the factory whatsoever. He was like, you're educated. You don't need to do this. Go out, find a better job. I paid for your education. I sent you to a great school. I sent you to a great high school. Do something better than what I'm doing. He goes, this is hard work. You work with your hands. This is, it's, you go to work, you go to work, there's no thought behind it. You're just sitting there making bags all day. But I saw it differently. He came here in the late 70s with like $300 to $400 in his pocket and nothing but a dream and zero education. All he knew, all he had rather, was work ethic. So he came with that determination to New York City and slowly but surely, he built a leather empire, I tell him. Till this day, he always looks at me and says, I could have done more. I could have done better. I should have went to school. And I always tell him day after day, I go, Dad, you did more with little, with no education, than people that I know that went to Harvard or grad school and spent millions and thousands of dollars on education. I was like, you did, you're the American dream. You're the epitome of it. I tell him all the time. And he never really understands it. And I realize it's because it's part of our culture also. We don't like to, we always think there's something better out there or we could do better. So we're very hard on ourselves. And I see that every day constantly with my father, and it's kind of the morale or what he, what's he taught, what he's taught me growing up. So it's always like strive to be better, do better. And, there's always something better out there. And, I always tell him, I'm like, you're completely wrong with what you did. It's amazing, and you should be very proud of yourself. Right. But the chemistry between us growing up was, I never really knew my dad growing up because he spent all his time at work. Mm-hmm. So in order for him to warm up to me or me to warm up to him, he's always bringing candy home or toys. When I was a little kid, I remember, because he used to work 6 days a week. From 9 to, he would get home at 9 o'clock at night and I'd be already in bed sleeping. So it took me a long time for me to really feel, like just comfortable, not like comfortable, but like understand like, oh, that my dad goes to work all day. That's why I don't see him. But I spent most of my time with my mom and my brothers and my sisters. But, not until high school when I really started working there in the summers, I understood what he goes through day in, day out. Then after college, and I decided I wanted to go work for him. He was just completely against it. We butted heads. We fought day and night. We'd go home. I'd go home, have dinner when I was still living at home with them, and it would be complete silence. I'd eat dinner. I'd say to my mom, "Thank you. I'm going to my bedroom," and that was it. And I wouldn't talk to him till the next morning on the car ride home. If there was a problem at work, we would talk about it on the car ride home at dinner. And I was like, I can't do this anymore. But it didn't become, the chemistry didn't adjust, I'd say, until one day I brought a big order in and he was like, all right, this is, you're good at this. Yeah. So I really had to prove myself to him and show him my compassion towards to the industry that he built, or the leather factory that he built from nothing.
That's really interesting. I love this story because it's typically the other way around. Like you grow up, you go to college, and then the family is like, come take over the family business, come join the family business. And in your case, it was stay away from the family business and do your own thing.
Yeah, he did not want me there whatsoever. I mean, I remember so many weeks where we wouldn't talk. And my mom was like, talk to your dad. I was like, no, I can't. He's too stubborn. He doesn't see my way. He's old school. I'm new school. I see things differently. I want to implement emails, for example. That was the first thing I brought in when I started working with him, and he thought I was crazy. He was like, "Why are you bringing this? We have a fax machine, or pick up the phone and call." I was like, "It doesn't work like that anymore." So there was a lot of adjustment.
What really intrigued you about the business?
It's a few things. I'm very creative. I'm artistic. I like to work with my hands. Mm-hmm. My dream when I was in high school was to go on to architecture school and get a degree in that and become an architect. I started working construction management for a little bit to get my feet wet. But I used to always draw and design. All my classes in college, all my electives were all art classes. All my art teachers used to tell me, you really should go into, jewelry or fine arts because you have that eye, you have that hand. So just seeing my father create things, using his two hands, making leather bags, just taking a drawing and, bringing it to life. I was intrigued by that. I fell in love with that. And there's no better satisfaction, and I tell this to everybody, than to see something come to life that you built, that you put together from your hands. Whether you're a carpenter or you're a mechanic and you build a car, there's nothing like that feeling that when you see it going down the street or you see it working and you're like, damn, I made that. That's pretty cool. For me, the feeling I get when I'm walking down the street and I see, someone wearing my handbag, I'm like, that's pretty cool. They're wearing it. They enjoy it. And I know every bag, like when I see it, if it's mine or not. And a lot of my friends are like,
Oh,
how do you know the
wow.
scores? I'm like, there's little things. You always know what's going out of your
Attention to
factory.
details.
I don't sit in the office and bark orders. We have 40 employees. My father's never sat in the office and barked orders. I've always learned from him, and he's taught me, if you don't get your hands dirty with your employees, you're gonna fail. You're not gonna succeed. So for me, the satisfaction of actually getting my hands dirty, working side by side with my employees, understanding the product, from A to Z, from not just selling it and telling a story, but being able to stand behind it 100% because I built it. I can guarantee it. There's no better feeling out there.
How was it like the learning curve, bringing all this aspirations and creativity and starting working with your dad? How was the learning curve learning the exact, the artistry of creating bags?
It's funny, like that's one of the things we still argue about day in and day out. I tell him all the time, like, Dad, you have 30 years on me. I will never be as good as you. No
Exactly.
matter what you say, no matter what you do. Like when he goes on vacation for 2 weeks, he's like, is the factory going to fall apart without me? I'm like, no, it's fine. But as soon as he leaves, I change things up and I do it my way. And 9 out of 10 times it gets done the same amount of time, but in a different process. However, he'll come in, maybe two days earlier than he was expected to come in, and he'll say, this is all wrong. Why are you doing it this way? And I'm like, Dad, just leave me alone. Let me finish it because it's going to be done in 2 days. The same amount of time it would have taken you to complete the job, I'm completing it, but under my way, like my way.
Yeah.
And we have different thought processes. So he always tells me, you'll never be as good as me. And I always tell him, you're right, I never will be. But I have my own ways, my own process of completing things. It's old school, new school mentality. And, that's the one thing we always go back and forth on and argue butt heads about. But, the dynamic is amazing. People come in and they always see us working side by side. And it's pretty cool to be able to work with my dad. Like we've become best friends over the last, I'd say 20 years now since I started working with him almost.
That's really amazing. You're really describing the struggle of every person who's ever tried to work with his family business, like day and night. Just all the butting heads and trying to do things a little bit differently.
But this lead to an amazing results actually. You bring a different perspective, and of course, caring for the business as much as your dad does, and that will result, to building on top of his legacy.
I mean, that was one of the things coming out of college was I couldn't let his legacy go to waste.
Exactly.
He built this from scratch, from ground up,
100%.
with no background in leather manufacturing and leather goods. When he was living in Beirut, he worked as a stock boy in a supermarket. That's what he did. He wasn't working in anything leather until he came here. He got a job, and slowly but surely he worked his way to the top. And the guy decided to go. He was like, I'm retiring. I'm going to close the factory. And my dad was like, you can't. This is all I know. He's like, give me about a year. And he built his own, saved up money and then started his own factory. But, it really is the American dream. And, I'm very proud of him. He's not as proud of himself as he should be. And I tell him all the time that he should be.
Yeah.
But, what he did is amazing. And for him to create this, and then for me to carry on the legacy with my two sisters, and, it's, for me, it's everything. I love it.
So growing up, like in an immigrant family with entrepreneurial, minds and mindset, and you as well being an entrepreneur, tell us about the moment or when that. What were you doing, or what were you thinking about when you started Any Bag initiative and idea?
So with the Any Bag, it actually started, I'd say, subconsciously about 4 years ago. One of the things I learned from my father was we never throw out any scraps, any remnants in the factory. because every piece of leather has value to it. There's money. It could be pennies. It could be 5 cents. It could be a quarter. Every piece of leather, there's a value to it. So we've always saved every piece of leather after cutting a handbag production and tried to reuse it some way, somehow down the line. When you walk through my factory floor, there's bins lining up the entire hallway of all leather scraps. And we always find ways, creative ways to use it. So what I did 4 years ago was I made a leather carpet using all the leftovers. We cut it into thin strips. And, we had this beautiful 6x5, area rug or throw rug that was one of a kind and made all from leftovers. So that's been sitting on my shelf for almost 4 years.
Yeah.
Fast forward, I realized, the pandemic we're going through with prior to COVID, but the plastic problem that we have,
That's a pandemic by itself.
I mean, it's a worldwide problem. And one night I was taking out my garbage and I said, this is crazy for a household of 3, the amount of garbage I'm taking out, what's the other 8.5 million people in New York City doing? And then where is that going? So that just kind of got the gears moving and the engines running. And I was like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a solution, or there's got to be a way for me to limit the amount of waste. So that day I started collecting all the different plastics that started to come into the factory. I collected all the plastics that we were getting from the supermarket or the grocery store, whether it was plastic bags or film that wraps your water bottles or your toilet paper. I was collecting all that from, newspaper bags. So we started collecting that. I started having a huge collection in the back of the factory, and my father started saying to me, "What are you doing with all this garbage? You're taking up all the space in the back of the factory." And I said, "Just trust the process. I have an idea. I don't know if it's going to work, but it could be huge if this does go through. This could be, this could solve one of the biggest problems that the world has." And flash forward about a year, and I started cutting the plastic up and, just manipulating it, trying to see what I could do, pushing the boundaries. What other use could we do with the waste? What could we, how could I upcycle it? How could I repurpose it? So I decided if I could weave leather, why can't I weave plastic and create a textile that's more durable than just a sheet of plastic? So we cut it up into thin strips, started weaving it on our loom, and, we made our first tote bag. The first tote bag that we made is about 1.5 years old. It's the same one that I use every day now for the past 1.5 years. And every time people see it, they're like, "That's amazing that it's made all from waste, all from garbage and leftovers." And I say, it is pretty cool, but the mindset is you got to think outside the box. Just because one item was made for a single purpose doesn't mean it's made for that single purpose. There's an alternative use just about everything. You just got to get creative with it.
That's also the creativity and the entrepreneurship kicking in.
And that's really where it came in hard. And we made the Any Bag. We launched it last February. We've sold over 200 pieces, and the feedback's been amazing.
Yeah.
But, a really cool project. Right now, I'm starting it just in New York City, but when you dive deeper into each bag that I make, you could pick out where the plastic bags came from, whether it came from Home Depot, CVS, New York Times.
I was just gonna say that's amazing. So you know exactly where, like, what kind of waste that turned
The
into
story of that bag.
Exactly.
The story of
So
the bag. That's amazing.
every bag is unique of its kind, tells its own story. Right now, it's a New York story, hence the name Any Bag, a New York bag, or
Yeah.
anybody's bag. So it's a play on words there.
Yeah,
But where the people that are making it are luxury artisans, they're craftsmen. It's not just someone making this in their house as a craft or a hobby. So the quality that's in there is second to none. It's the same people that are making bags for all. It's the same people that are making bags for all the luxury designers out there that are selling bags for thousands and $2,000 and up. So the quality is there. It's a different approach.
Right. So throughout that process, you got a lot of exposure, and you were on local TV in New York. how did that all happen? How did they hear about the story? How did that process go?
So how it started was we joined the Department of Sanitation of New York has a show called Refashion NY. They get all these vendors, all these designers that either upcycle, repurpose, recycle clothing, and try to just give it a second use, an alternative use. But what was unique about my process was there was nobody else taking trash and giving it that luxury look and feel. So they were very intrigued by that, by the whole process. And they came over to me and they're like, we have the show in 2 months. We'd love to feature you. So I got on board. We did the Refashion show in Brooklyn. And that Saturday night, I started getting phone calls from news anchors or writers saying, we saw your bag at the Refashion event, and we'd love to videotape and film it. But we were on all the local news channels. We did a big hit with Business Insider on their Facebook channel, which had over 2.5 million views.
Wow.
So the exposure was great, and the feedback was majority of it was positive. Some people questioned the price, but my response to that is I'm making it in the heart of New York City. If I was making this in Indiana or Ohio, where it wasn't expensive to live, I could definitely reduce the price. I could bring it down to maybe half the cost. Mm-hmm. But you got to remember where I am and the location I'm in. I'm in the heart of New York City on 29th and 6th Avenue. There's nobody left that still produces anything in New York City. Everything's been outsourced. We've been there for since 1982, since my dad started. So for me to take, New York City trash and transform it into a luxury item, that's a win-win right there. But my ultimate goal is to obviously bring the price down and make this more global. My slogan is, a New York bag made by New Yorkers. A New York bag made in Manhattan by New Yorkers using New York City trash. So it's it's completely circular. I'm taking plastic and having it recirculate rather than going to our landfills and polluting our waterways. So it's it's a win-win.
Exactly. So Alex, now, as you know, the pandemic and
when COVID hit us, hit New York City fairly hard. And we were forced to shut down, I believe, March 20th or 22nd. We were fully operational. We had 40 employees. And Friday afternoon at 12, we kind of I screamed out, said, hey, guys, we got to shut it down. This is getting serious. Everybody go home. We'll figure out a game plan. But New York City has to shut down right now. Only essential workers are allowed to continue working. So that lasted about 3 weeks where I was home. But during those 3 weeks, I was on phone calls, emails, trying to contact anybody, from any city representative or state representative that could make us deemable as a factory that could produce anything that is necessary for, PPE, for the hospitals, whatever they needed. I was like, use us for what we're for. We're a factory. We could produce and manufacture just about anything. So it took us about 3 weeks to finally get in contact with people and just get things rolling. We started off working with a nonprofit where we donated about 5,000 masks at first. And it was just me, my father, my brothers and sisters that went in at first. And we were just cutting and sending it out to home workers who were stitching masks and then donating them to local hospitals. Then we finally got a city contract from the state of New York to make aprons. And we ended up making 200,000 aprons for all the local hospitals. And then from there, I was trying to get a government grant for masks, which became very difficult for us. So what I did was I took it into my own hands and we started a GoFundMe. And from that GoFundMe, we raised $21,000, and we were able to donate over 16,000 masks to all the local hospitals, organizations, anybody that needed masks in New York City. So that was kind of how we transitioned the factory and were able to bring back all our workers. Because for me, it was a shame just to see my factory shut down. Wow. We're one of the largest factories in New York City. Use us for what we're for. We could produce anything, and I couldn't just see my factory shut down, my father's legacy just being shut down like that. And on top of that, I have 40 people that depend on us. They have families, they have bills, and if I'm not providing for them, they can't provide for their family. So it was extremely important for me just to find a way to get the factory back up and running, and that's what we did for about 2 months, 3 months, just PPE nonstop, and it's very rewarding at the end.
Absolutely, that's a really noble mission. Alex, so throughout your experience, graduating from college, choosing to go into a small business, butting heads with your dad, starting your own thing, just going through every little stage of that entrepreneurial process, what is it what's one advice that you'd offer somebody who's going to be in your place in a few years, going through college now and thinking about whether to join the family business, going to a little bit of an older school business, they have their own ideas, and how can they find themselves to be a fit in such an old, and not old, such a small business?
I mean, I would always say, just my biggest thing is don't be scared to fail, because you are. I've done it 100 times. I mean, during college, I worked at Smith Barney. I interned there, and I realized I hated it. I hated corporate America more than anything, and I couldn't wait to get out of it. And I remember, like, my senior year, halfway through the semester, I called a lady, like the manager of the program, and I said, "Listen, I can't come back. This is just not for me. Like, I can't do this. I can't wear a suit every day. Like, I'm not happy." And I never turned back, and I started working construction management because I wanted to get back into architecture. After I graduated Fordham, I went to 1 year of grad school at Stevens University in Jersey, and at the start of the second semester, I made a U-turn. I said, "This is not what I want to do." And I went back to that's when I went back to the family business, and I said, "This is, I want to take this on, and I want to grow it." And, I fell in love with the industry. Like, I grew up in the business all my life. Since I was 5 years old, I was running around in the factory. I basically cut my teeth there. My mom and dad, were both working there when I was a little kid, because that's how they provided for us. It's not easy. It's not a 9 to 5. You're constantly thinking about, your game plan for the next day. My workers leave at 5 o'clock, 5:30, but I'm there for an extra hour, setting up and preparing for the next day. In the morning, it's the same thing, setting up, preparing, making sure everybody has something to do. If you count the steps I take, my father and I always have a competition who did the most. When we have our watches on, he's like, "Oh, I did 10 miles today in the factory." I'm like, "Well, I did 6. He goes, "You see, I do more than you." I go, "I know, Dad. You'll always beat me." But it's always, there's always a competition there. But it's funny, I enjoy it. But there's a lot of responsibility that goes with it. But you can't be scared. You can't be scared to fail, and always try new things. Same thing with the pandemic, with COVID. I couldn't just shut the factory down. I figured out, what else could I do? And that's when I realized we could, switch gears and go into PPE. So we pivoted the factory from leather goods to manufacturing masks and aprons. We, also with the masks, with the bomb and, with the explosion in Beirut, we donated $3,000. We made 200 masks and donated all the proceeds to an organization called Bebu Shebek in Beirut that was going around and fixing all the apartment buildings in the surrounding area that were affected by explosion. But I'm not in the mask making game to make money. And people always say, "Oh, you must be killing it with the mask." I'm like, it's really not. I don't make money on that. It keeps the machines running. It keeps my employees employed, and just keeps the factory moving. I want to go back to making handbags. That's what I want to do. Like, for me, making PPE, it's helping. It's, caring for my community, caring for one another. but that's not what we're here for. It's not a moneymaker. It's just basically, putting food on the table for my employees, and that's very important for us. And my employees have been with me for 20 years, some of them. So we're one big family.
I really love it, and I notice a common theme among all our guests that we spoke to is it really comes down to what is it that you love to do, what is it that you value,
And work ethic.
and work ethic, and just go at it. That's really amazing. I love hearing the story.
What's next, Alex, for Alex and for AnyBag?
What I'm doing now with the AnyBag is we kind of relaunched it, or we're relaunching it now because of during COVID we kind of stopped everything. But the sky's the limit with this. Like I'm trying to manipulate the textile that I created with the AnyBag to seeing what else we could make with it. I'm actually making a surfboard bag to see, maybe it could carry and, help clean up the oceans. Like we can do an initiative with that, with, professional surfers around the country, around the world, where we team up with them and, they could push the initiative. But plastic is a big problem. And, I'm building a business to go out of business. The AnyBag for me won't be successful until we completely eradicate plastic in the world. Right now it's, cleaning up New York City one plastic bag at a time, but it's far bigger than what it is. My ultimate goal with it is to take the program and have other cities adopt it, other states adopt it, where we build workshops and you're creating awareness. You hire people, so you're creating jobs, and you bring in the looms that create the textile, and you're making the AnyBag within those cities, eliminating the carbon footprint of every city completely. So instead of taking that trash, that plastic trash that every city accumulates, you're recirculating it, and you're doing a big favor to all the recycling centers, because every year they spend $300,000 to $1 million just in costs of repairing machines from plastic bags clogging or breaking the system down.
Wow.
So it's plastic bags. No one likes to recycle them because it's such a deterrent. It's such a nuisance, and it's a big problem. So like with the AnyBag, the sky's the limit, and I just want to take this globally and see what we could do with this. Like in my mind, this could be the next Tom's or the Warby Parker, where it's you're giving something and you're taking something and giving back. But that's what I need the city and state officials to really come in and be like, hey, let's join up and see what we could do together.
Great mission. We'll be rooting for you.
Awesome, Alex. It was an amazing, chat. Learning about your journey and how you're positively impacting the community, and we really loved the conversation. Thank you so much.
And we look forward to meeting in person in New York soon.
Take care.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you for tuning in. We hope you enjoyed the episode.
Please visit our website to vote for your favorite story.
And don't forget to follow us on social media and subscribe to our podcast.
Together we feel like